So welcome, and we will begin Ois Gimel, where the Rebbe has posed difficulties with understanding our pasuk of Podo B'Shalom Nafshi Mikravli, and that this pasuk is not only difficult to understand how you can have Poda, and that Poda should be B'Shalom, and it should be Mikravli and Kivrabim Hayimadi, they have Milchama and Pedia going hand in hand. But as the Rebbe points out, the two aspects of the pasuk are two opposite extremes, because there's milchama, there are various states of battle, and mikrav, that type of battle that's described as krav, is the most intense type of battle. That is battle where the two adversaries are not only in close proximity to each other, but they are wrestling with each other, and in the process of doing that, hugging each other and wrestling, trying to wrestle the other one down. So that's how close and how intense that type of battle is. And on the other hand, the B'Shalom refers to the ultimate state of Shalom, like the Shalom that we experienced during the times of Shlomo, and even greater level of Shalom, which will be when Mashiach will come. So how can it be that in the same pasuk we have both? We have the Podo B'Shalom Mikrav. How can the two go together? So the Rebbe begins v'yuvan. This will be understood b'hektim hamavur b'Maamer Podo B'Shalom, by prefacing that which the Mitzvah Rebbe explains in his Maamer, on which our Maamer is based. That the two inyanim of battle, krav, and shalom, the yeshnam b'avedus hatfilah, one has in serving Hashem through davening. So the Rebbe points out the bekama mekoim is that in many places where it's explained shabirur the tefillah b'derech milchama, that the birur, the refinement and elevation during davening, is b'derech milchama, is a way of war, that a person has a spiritual battle going on within their mind and heart during davening, as the saying goes in the Maamer of Shas, Sleisa Shas, Krav, at the time of davening is a time of battle. And v'habir or b'derech menucha, but the birur, the refinement and elevation, which is b'derech menucha, in a peaceful and restful way of shalom, is why is when one engages in learning Torah, that then one elevates and refines their nefesh habahamis in a peaceful manner, whereas during tefillah one engages with and elevates and refines their nefesh habahamis in a way of krav, in a way of shas sleisa shas. Krav is a time of battle. Avol, that's how it's explained elsewhere. Avol b'drush zed balagu mivur, but in this Maamer of the Mitzvah Rebbe, that our Maamer that we're learning is based on, so the Mitzvah Rebbe explains shegam ba'avedus hatfilah yashnam shnei inyanim, that in the service to Hashem of davening there are also these two inyanim, that you have both together, that it's a time of battle between the nefesh elikis and the nefesh habahamis, and at the same time you also have the idea of shalom. In other words, that you have that you have various levels of our love to Hashem that one reaches and experiences during the time of davening. That generally there are three levels that we describe in Kriya Shema, that we call b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshcha, b'chol moedecha. So therefore, that first level of love to Hashem that we describe as b'chol levavcha, that this level of love to Hashem, as is explained in Chassidus in numerous places, that there are, generally speaking, there are 5 parts to the neshama, or 6. You have nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida, and you have the godly spark that's within the yechida that a person has. But those various parts of the neshama are generally categorized in 2 general categories. One is naran, nefesh, ruach, neshama, and the other is the chaya yechida. That the nefesh, ruach, neshama is that part of the soul that is within the person and that one experiences in their day-to-day life. The neshama being the intellect, and the ruach being the emotions, and the nefesh being the more the maisa part of their neshama. And the chaya yechida are what we call makifim, and they stand higher than and hover above and remain not as fully invested within the person as the nefesh, ruach, neshama. So therefore, our relationship with Hashem is experiencing these various levels. So love to Hashem that we describe as b'chol levavcha shemitzad b'chinas naran. This is the love to Hashem on the level of the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, the conscious self, as we know ourselves to be. So im hayesh shegam al yedei avazuhu poyel. Shigam nefesh abamis yilo avas Hashem, that even on this level of service to Hashem and relating to Hashem, on the level of the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, the ava that we call b'chol levavcha. So here as well, the neshama, the nefesh elikis, has an effect and an influence on the nefesh abamis to the degree that the nefesh abamis also achieves a feeling and arrives at a place where the nefesh abamis feels a love to Hashem. That not only the neshama has a love to Hashem, but the nefesh abamis has as well. Like it's explained, b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha, that we love Hashem b'chol levavcha, and it says with not libcha but levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha, that the nefesh abamis also is transformed and elevated to the point that it also feels a love to Hashem. Even though we reach that level, even on this level of love to Hashem of b'chol levavcha, but since the love to Hashem that we achieve at this point of b'chol levavcha is is because one comprehends and understands that godliness is a good thing, and once the nefesh habahamis is in a position to, and it appreciates that Hashem is good. So like it's explained in Chassidus, that a nefesh habahamis really ultimately just wants that which is good. It's just that as it is by nature, it perceives good to be the physical and the material and the pleasures that this world offers up. But if the nefesh elikis takes the time to explain to the nefesh habahamis that elikus is hutaiv, that godliness is good, so the nefesh habahamis also wanting that which is good can arrive at a place where it can also feel a love to Hashem once it comprehends that Hashem is good. But since this love to Hashem is predicated on and is based on in intellectual understanding that Hashem is good, so since this is when we achieve the love to Hashem by convincing the nefesh habahamis and influencing the nefesh habahamis and explaining to the nefesh habahamis that elikus is good. And so seichel is a pnimi, that the neshama must engage with the nefesh habahamis and must speak the language of the nefesh habahamis and think and dwell upon topics that make sense to the nefesh habahamis. So the person is fully engaged with and invested in and focused on the party with which it's engaged in. The neshama is explaining to the nefesh habahamis in a way that they communicate on a level that the nefesh habahamis can comprehend as well. How they move on the pulas nefesh elikis b'nefesh habahamis sheteves havaya. So the effect that the neshama has on the nefesh habahamis, that it should also feel a love to Hashem, is by being mislabish in the nefesh habahamis. In other words, that which the neshama meditates upon has to be those sorts of topics, and it has to be articulated in the person's mind in a way that even the nefesh habahamis can relate to those ideas that are being meditated upon. So that's the idea. That's what we call to have an effect on the nefesh habahamis and to be mislabish in the nefesh habahamis. So this idea that the nefesh elikis engages with the nefesh habahamis in a way that it puts itself in a place where it speaks the language of the nefesh habahamis and dwells upon ideas that the nefesh habahamis can relate to. So hu inyan shel milchama. So this is the idea that it's in a sense waging war, meaning that it's embracing the nefesh habamis for what the nefesh habamis is, and on that level, it's relating to the nefesh habamis ideas that the nefesh habamis as well can come around to understand and arrive at the conclusion that it should feel a love to Hashem. So this is engaging with the nefesh habamis, where the nefesh habamis is the nefesh habamis that it is, and therefore this is a battle between the two souls, between the neshama and the nefesh habamis, to bring the nefesh habamis to that place, and for the neshama to bring itself to the place where it engages with the nefesh habamis on this level. So that is a milchama. Even when a person progresses and reaches the level of Ava that's referred to as B'chol Nafshecha, that the level of B'chol Nafshecha is when one progresses further, that after they've achieved the love to Hashem of the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, they reach the love to Hashem that is experienced on the level of Chaya of their Neshama. So even though here the engagement is of a different nature, because Chaya is that level of the Neshama that's beyond the person's intellect and emotions and so on. And it's the makif of the neshama, it's that higher level of the neshama. And therefore here we engage with the nefesh habamis in a different way. And the way that the neshama engages with the nefesh habamis at this level of love to Hashem of b'chol nafshecha is not by speaking the language of and thinking and meditating upon topics that the nefesh habamis can relate to. Ella, it's approached in a different way. Because one feels the intense ratzin and love of the nefesh elokis, ratzin shalamayla mitam, that ratzin that the nefesh elokis has, that's not arrived at as a result and not born out of meditation and understanding that brings the neshama to love Hashem, but rather it's tapping into that natural love to Hashem that a neshama possesses. And with the intensity of this love to Hashem that the neshama experiences, so the ritzanis of the nefesh habamis fall away, because a person is so invested and so committed to their relationship to Hashem that there's no room for the nefesh habamis to be heard. So here one would assume, and it actually is the case, that it's not the same type of milchama as one has when they're still on the level where it's the b'chol vavcha level where the neshama and the nefesh habamis are engaging in a conversation, and there we can understand that it's a battle between the two perspectives. Whereas here, where it's feeling the intense love to Hashem of the neshama, and so the nefesh habamis falls away. But afal pikein mikivan shebitol ritzain is the nefesh habamis who rak mitzad iskambros haratz and the nefesh elokis. But since at the end of the day, that which the nefesh habamis wants is not heard, only because of the tremendous intensity of experiencing the love that the neshama feels. Hainu, so what that means to say is shegam achshav yesh lenefesh habamis behelem ritzainis zodim. So the nefesh habamis hasn't really changed in any way that it no longer wants what it wanted before. The nefesh habamis still wants what it always wanted. But since it finds itself in the presence and it's sharing the mind and the heart of a person, and that person is experiencing that intense love to Hashem of the level of chaya of their neshama, and therefore there's no room for the nefesh habamis to make its voice heard, and therefore it's misbatel in the presence of this great presence of the neshama of the nefesh elokis. So lachein nichlal ze bo aveda de birur shebederach Muhammad. So at the end of the day, this in a sense is still in a state of waging a battle between their neshama and their nefesh habamis, because the nefesh habamis hasn't fundamentally changed and it's still a behema. It's only that in the presence and being in such close proximity to the nefesh elokis, it finds itself unable to make itself heard. So this is still considered milchama, because that potential for spiritual milchama is still ever present, and it's only that as long as this intense level of love to Hashem of b'chol nafshecha is felt by the person, then the nefesh habahamis cannot find its voice. But were that intensity not to be felt, then the nefesh habahamis would continue to be the nefesh habahamis that it is. But where do we ultimately arrive at the place where there's actual and real shalom? That's that third level of love of b'chol meidacha. That the level of avodah b'chol meidacha is the love to Hashem that one experiences when one on the level of yichida of their neshama. And this is what a level of shalom. Because the level of yichida is unique in that, although Hashem created the world in a way that we call as zelumas asalikim, that whatever exists in kedusha has its counterpart in klipa, but this deepest level of the neshama, the level of yichida, is ein keneged lumas. There is no counterpart for this level of the neshama in klipa, like the Gemara says, bevua de bevua las. They don't have the makif of the makif. Like we said, chaya is the first level of makif, and yichid is what we call the shadow of the shadow, the tzel of the tzel, the makif above the makif, and that klipa does not have. Lachein, therefore, since klipa has no answer to this level of the neshama, not only because the intensity of the neshama is so great, but what the neshama experiences on this level, there is no similar counterpart on the part of the nefesh habahamis. So therefore, when the level of yichida is revealed and a person experiences a love to Hashem of b'chol meidacha, which is the yichida within their neshama, then mispatel halumaseh. Then the Luma says not that it's there, but it can't make its voice be heard, but it's completely transformed. Because on the level of the first level of Makif of Chaya, Kivin Sheyesh Keneg, the Luma says, since on that level there is Klipa, that is the counterpart and the counterpoint to that level of Kedusha. So therefore, when one has only, and this is a great achievement, but at the end of the day, it's still limited because it's not yet Yechida. So when if one only achieved Hagili the level of Chaya, then because the Klipa exists, that opposes the level of Chaya, so therefore Einei Shelel Umevatal Oritzein Isarim the Nefesh habahamis. So it's not that what the Nefesh habahamis is negated entirely. It's not negated because the Nefesh habahamis has something to say that in the world of Klipa is the equivalent of Chaya in the world of Kedusha. But Vuhudak Bederech Hiskabros, it's true that then the person only experiences the love to Hashem, and the nefesh habahamis is muted, but it's only because it's been overpowered and overwhelmed by the presence of this level of the neshama. That the rotz and the love to godliness, that on this level of chaya is stronger than the rotzen of the nefesh habahamis. So therefore, it is silenced. But so if you want to transform the nefesh habahamis, that it should no longer be the nefesh habahamis, but it should be transformed. And it's only through revealing the level of yichida of the neshama to which the nefesh habahamis has no response. And when this level is revealed, then we achieve the transformation of the nefesh habahamis, which is the idea of shalom, that you don't even have the potential state of milchama. So the Rebbe says, so this, we can connect this to that which is known about the koyach of Mesiras Nefesh that every Jewish person possesses. The koyach of Mesiras Nefesh that the koyach of Mesiras Nefesh is rooted in the level of yichida in the neshama, that and it makes itself felt throughout the neshama on various levels and through the level of chachma and so on, but it's rooted in the level of yichida. That the Mesiras Nefesh that every Jew possesses, and they're willing to sacrifice their life not to be separated, God forbid, from Hashem. So it's not because a person feels an intense longing to be connected to Hashem, and therefore their Maaser Nefesh not to be separated from Him, because if that that were the dynamic that was going on that brings a person to Mesiras Nefesh, then Hainu Shaf Shali is Beifan Acher El Sharetza Beifan Zeh. Then on that level and in that place, we say that a person potentially could go this way, could go that way, like we said before, that on the level of Chaya, which is the makif of Ratzin, there's a counterpart on the side of Klipa. So a person may want this, and they may want that, but because of the intensity of the Ratzin and the love that they have to Hashem, so that's what they want. It's not that it's entirely negated, that the possibility of wanting something else is entirely negated, but it's only that the person settles on the Ratzin that he has to be connected to Hashem. So the Mesiras Nefesh that a Jewish person has is actually much deeper than that. In other words, it's in a place because the person cannot bring himself and cannot allow himself, cannot even contemplate the possibility of Chas v'Shalom being separated from Hashem. That means that it's rooted in a place where there is no other possibility. So that's deeper than the Ratzon to Hashem. It's on that level of Yechida, like we said, where Yechida, we said there's no Le'umasa, there's no counterpart in the world of Klipa. So the Mesiras Nefesh is when a person in those circumstances where the Mesiras Nefesh is called forth is where a person feels that there is no other possibility. He would never countenance the possibility of being disconnected from Hashem, which is an expression of the Yechida. And based on this, we can explain that which is explained in numerous places and a number of places. That the Av of B'chol Moedecha is the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. So the Rebbe says the L'cheirei move on. So this is difficult to understand because because like we said, the Av of is a progression. You begin with your nefesh ruach neshama. You then progress further to b'chol nafshecha, which is your chaya, and then you progress further to b'chol meidacha, which is your yechida. But the idea that a person is in a place where they're ready to be meiser nefesh begins long before they get to b'chol meidacha, because even when they're on the level of b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, even that mechayavis l'cheirinyan hamesiras nefesh, that also would guide and direct a person that they should be meiser nefesh because of their relationship with Hashem. In other words, because when a person feels a love to Hashem, that his mind has reached the conclusion that he shall love Hashem, it is in his neshama, therefore feels a love to Hashem, and even his nefesh habamis is convinced to love Hashem because it sees Hashem as something good and it wants that which is good. So even then, the only thing of value in his life is his relationship with Hashem, and that is sufficient for a person to have the strength that it takes to be Meiser Nefesh V'alachas Kama V'Kama Kshavas Yisavaya Hi B'chol Nafshi. And for sure, when a person reaches the level of B'chol Nafshecha, Harei Bevada Yimser Nafshi Avure, when he feels that intense Ratzon to Hashem, to the degree that in Nefesh Habamis, which is present within him, but is muted in the presence of this great Ratzon and love to Hashem, Harei Bevada Yimser Nafshi Avure. So for sure, on this level, a person will be in a place spiritually where, faced with a choice, they would be meiser nefesh and give up their life, because what else is there to live for? This is all that they want. So why is it that we say that b'chol meidacha is mesiras nefesh? What do we reach? What level do we reach, and what spiritual state do we reach when you reach the Av of B'chol Meidacha, that we say, now this is Mesiras Nefesh? That choice would have already been made long before that by the B'chol Avavcha and B'chol Nafshecha. Why is it only by B'chol Meidacha that we say that a person has achieved the level of Mesiras Nefesh? The Rebbe says the explanation is Sham Mesiras Nefesh. Yes, it's true that a person would be Meiser Nefesh when they're at the state of B'chol Avavcha, B'chol Nafshecha, but the Mesiras Nefesh
nefesh that the person is prepared to follow through with on when he's in that state of love to Hashem. He boyfriend that a person wants to sacrifice his life because of his relationship with Hashem and because of what that means to him. That when a person is on the level of the love to Hashem of their nefesh ruach neshama, then it's ratzon shal pitam b'das, that ratzon to be connected to Hashem, that love that they have to Hashem and the desire they have to be connected to Him is al pitam b'das, is dictated and results from their intellectual understanding of the goodness of Hashem and why that is all that really matters, and therefore they want to be connected to Him in a life that is separated from Him, and they're not able to pursue their connection to Hashem is not worth living, so they're Maaser Nefesh. So it's because of the ratzon that a person has built on Tam Vadas. And when a person is on the level of love to Hashem of B'chol Nafshecha, which is Chaya, is the ratzon Shalamai Lamitam, then a person has gone even further and has tapped into that love to Hashem that the neshama possesses, that is beyond the intellect, deeper than the intellect, and precedes the intellect and is not predicated on the intellect. It's just how a person feels. They just feel that this is what's valuable and this is what's important, and therefore they're Maaser Nefesh, because again, a life that is not about their relationship to Hashem is just not worth living. So that's the Mesiras Nefesh that one has when they're on the level of B'chol Avavcho V'chol Nafshecha. Hashem Kina Mesiras Nefesh Shemitzad Avad B'chol Ma'idecha. But then when a person reaches the level of B'chol Ma'idecha and the Mesiras Nefesh that they have when they're on this level, which is Yechida, the Yechida of their neshama, that is what they're experiencing. So this Mesiras Nefesh, he boyfen sheni yocheli is nifrad chas v'shalom. It's not because of an expression of what it is that he wants, but it's more an expression, or not more, what it is an expression of is that he can't even contemplate any other possibility. There is no other possibility. Nothing else it can even be considered. Which, like we said, this is the level of Yechida, where there is no other counterpoint for this in the world of Klippa. There is no other possibility. And so that's what we mean when we say that the real Mesiras Nefesh is when one is on the level of love to Hashem of B'chol Moedecha. Ki Mesiras Nefesh, because ultimately the idea of Mesiras Nefesh, Huinyan HaBittul, is the ultimate bittul of self-nullification, where one puts themselves aside because of their relationship with Hashem, to the degree that they sacrifice their life, that they put themselves aside completely. Their entire being, their entire mitzvah is nullified because of their relationship to Hashem. So if that's the real idea and the real meaning and the real value of Mesiras Nefesh, the bittul of the person. So when a person is being Maaser Nefesh because it's what they want, so they're a holy being, but it's not the bittul of their being. It's an expression of the ratzin of who they are. But the idea of bittul, that a person nullifies themselves entirely for the sake of Hashem. Huksha Mesiras Nefesh Hiloi Mitzad Ratzin Mitzias Shaloi. When the Mesiras Nefesh they have is not because of their Ratzin, because of their Mitzias, what it is that they want, as great and holy as it may be, Ela Mitzad Elikus, because they feel, they sense the Elikus, and there can be no other possibility and no other state of existence considered that's not Elikus. So it doesn't come from their Mitzias, it comes from the Mitzias of Elikus, that finds expression through their act of Mesiras Nefesh, and that's the ultimate bittul, not the great level achieved by the person, but the ultimate bittul is when the ratzin and the presence of Hashem finds expression within and through the person, and that's when one has the Mesiras Nefesh on the level of B'chol Moedecha. That's the Mesiras Nefesh, that the person is that vehicle of bittul, of ultimate nullification of the Mitzias because of Elikus, that comes mitzad the Elikus. The Rebbe says this is one of the explanations as to why Shabitul or Ritzainis Zarim the Nefesh Habamis, why it is that the Bitul of the Ritzainis of the Nefesh Habamis that we said before is only on when one experiences the level of Yechida. When one reaches the love of B'chol Meidacha, the level of Yechida, only then can one achieve that it's not just that the Nefesh Habamis is muted, but it's that the Nefesh Habamis there's a bittul of the Ratzon Shabamis. It's transformed and no longer has those Ritzainos. It's no longer a Nefesh Habahamis. Because when one is on the level of love Tashem of B'chol Avavcho V'chol Nafshecha Mekivan Shemitzad Avazu Yeshav Sharis Shalaylim Sanafshi. Since on this level, yes, it's true, the person decides, and their mitzias is in a place where the conclusion that they reach is that their life is only worth living if they have the opportunity to be connected to Hashem, and if not, then it's not worth living. So that's the conclusion that they reach. But it could have gone in another direction, whether it's on the Ratzin al Pitam Vadas or even the Ratzin Lamayla Mitam Vadas, but just on the level of Chaya. So it could have gone this way or it could have gone the other way, and it's only that he reached the right conclusion. And that which the person ultimately is Meiser Nefesh is because that is his Ratzin, that is where his Mitzias is at. So since he's at that level of Kedusha, where it's Mitzad his Mitzias, and where there's room for other possibilities, so that means he's at that level where the Klippa as well is still the Mitzias that it is. So yes, it's true that in this battle between Kedusha and Klippa, between the Nefesh Elikis and the Nefesh Habahamis, one can reach a state where the Nefesh Elikis overwhelms the Nefesh Habahamis, but it doesn't negate that the Nefesh Habahamis is there, and that there is a possibility that the decision could have gone in a different direction. It's only that the person and the weight of the strength of the intensity of the feelings of the Nefesh Elikis and the identity of the person mitzad their seichel and their understanding and their emotions is that they chose to go in this way. So, but to reach that level of complete bittul of klipa, is only when one reaches the love to Hashem, which is b'chol moedecha shemitzad avazu afterly speifanachar this love b'chol moedecha, this love that taps into the level of yichid of the neshama. Here one is in a place where there is no other possibility, which is, like we said, why the person is Meiser Nefesh when they're on this level, because they cannot contemplate any other possibility. And Dafka, this level of Mesiris Nefesh, is the ultimate expression of Bittul to Elokus, and it comes not mitzad the mitzias of the person, but mitzad the Elokus, and there is no other possibility. And so this ultimate level of Bittul, and this is where we achieve the ultimate level of the Bittul of the mitzias of the Nefesh Habahamis, because there is no other possibility, there is no le'umasa. Hey, so hine Maamer anal de balagula, and the Maamer of the Middle Rebbe that this Maamer is based upon. Betchila soinyin, in the beginning of where he discusses what we're discussing in the Maamer. So before dingen hamol chamashal nefshal kisim nefesh habahamis. So he explains when he discusses it in the beginning of his explanation. He says that the Melchama of the Nefesh Elikis with the Nefesh Habahamis is he benaran hamaluvashim beguf nefesh habahamis is on that level of nefesh ruach neshama, that the nefesh ruach neshama is our conscious self, and this is the level that is present in the same place spiritually where the nefesh habahamis is present, and so there is a battle and that is waged between the nefesh elikis and the nefesh habahamis, because here is a place where they're both present and each one is working to assert their presence and their dominance and so on. However, on the higher levels of the neshama that are not in the same place as the nefesh habahamis, so this the Middle Rebbe says in the beginning of his discussion of the topics that we're discussing here, that on that level of chaya and yechida, there's no battle, because it's not in the place where both are present, and therefore there's no battle on this level between the nefesh elikis and the nefesh habahamis. Ella, however, shlach later on, when as the discussion goes further. So when we clarify and we get into more detail, so the Mitzvah Rebbe then goes on to explain that in truth, as we've been discussing here, that even on the level of Chaya as well, there's also that Milchama between the Nefesh Elikis and the Nefesh Habahamis, but the place where there is no war and battle between the Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Habahamis, in the place of Shalom will be Yechida Dafka, is Dafka on the level of Yechida. The Rebbe says as follows: that this is similar to that which Hashem tells David HaMelech Kshirot Livnei Beis HaMikdash, that David saw that he's in comfort and Hashem was still in a temporary dwelling, and he wanted to. He had the inspiration to and also because of the mitzvah to build a Beis HaMikdash that's connected to achieving and putting all the wars behind us, and so he wanted to build a Beis HaMikdash. That Hashem told him through the Navi that Dam L'Reiv Shafachta Gamer, that since you spilled so much blood, that means you waged so many battles, and therefore Lo Yisiv Nebayis Lishmi Gamer, that you, David, are not going to be the one who will build the Beis HaMikdash for me, but Hine Ben Neilad L'cha, but you will have a son, that who Yeish Menucha Gamer, he will be a man of peace and a man of tranquility and so on, and who Yivne Bayis Lishmi Gamer, he will be the one who will build the Beis HaMikdash. Ella. But even though Hashem told David in response to his initiative of wanting to build the Beis HaMikdash, that given what he needed to engage in order to achieve that level of what we call Hashem Iniach Mikalev, that Hashem allowed him to achieve the menucha, that he had to wage war to get there, and Hashem told him that he would therefore not be the one to build the Beis HaMikdash. But still, David was a very active participant in the preparation, and more than a participant, through him was all the preparations for the building of the Beis HaMikdash were done. The Tavnis HaMikdash, the blueprints for the Beis HaMikdash and the plans, Nas Al Yedei David, was done through David Miyada via his skill, that in the various ways through a Navi and inspiration and so on, that he prepared all the planning for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. And Vayitin David l'Shleima b'nayas Tavnes Ulam v'Gamer, and he passed them on to his son Shleima, who would be the one to actually build the Beis HaMikdash. So David prepared the plans, but the actual building of the Beis HaMikdash came about through Shleima v'Tzarech Lav. And so there says we need to understand the key and Beis HaMikdash kol menucha v'shalom nafka, since like Hashem told David that the Beis HaMikdash is connected to peace and tranquility, which is a shalachei nemer l'David lo'isiv nebayis l'shmi ki shmo chames hata, that's why Hashem told David that you will not be the one to build the Beis HaMikdash for me, because you're a man of war, not a man of peace. So if that is the case, so why was any of the work and preparation for the Beis HaMikdash done through David? He seemingly isn't the right person to even be the one to prepare for the Beis HaMikdash, since he's a Yishmo Chamais and the Beis HaMikdash requires peace and tranquility. So the Rebbe says, Rabbi Rebbe's explanation is, because then, because when David didn't want to build the Beis HaMikdash, not that he didn't want to, but he didn't put his mind to building the Beis HaMikdash right at the outset of his kingship, but rather, when David wanted to build the Beis HaMikdash, and for sure when he actually engaged in the work to prepare and lay out the blueprints and so on, David actually was then no longer in a state of war. He was actually in a state of peace. Like the pasuk says, that Hashem brought him to a state of menucha from all his enemies. He had vanquished all his enemies, and he was actually in a state of menucha. So therefore, that's why David felt that he actually can be the one to build the Beis HaMikdash, and that's why ultimately he's the one who actually did all the preparations for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. Ella, the only thing is Shekiv and Shamanucha the David, but since the rest and the peace that David arrived at was as a result of the wars that he engaged in, therefore binyan Beis HaMikdash that's why the actual building of the Beis HaMikdash had to be through Shloimeh, who was a man of peace, a man of tranquility. Menucha Batzim, Shloimeh did not have to engage in any wars in order to arrive at that state of shalom and sheket and menucha, but he was a ish menucha ba'atzim. He was a man of peace, and therefore he is the one to build the Beis HaMikdash. But since David had achieved a level of peace, therefore he was in a position where he could engage in all the preparations for the Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe says that based on this idea, that which the Rebbe explains in his Maamer when he begins the discussion, that on the level of Chaya, there's no war between the Nefesh Elikis and the Nefesh Habahamis, and the war is only on the level of Nefesh Ruach and Neshama. So in a sense, that's true, because while Derech HaMenucha de David la'achrei shenotzach kol hamilchamis, that would be the equivalent of the state of rest that David achieved after he had engaged in and won and conquered and won all his milchamis, and he was in a state of menucha, which did qualify him to be a part of the process of the building of the Beis HaMikdash and doing all the preparations. So the level of chaya is the equivalent of that. It's the menucha. It's like the equivalent of menucha, which is after milchama. Because on the level of Nefesh Ruach and Neshama, Shemeslap Shimbaguf, the Nefesh Habahamis that are present in the same place where the Nefesh Habahamis is present and is fully engaged with the Guf and so on. So Kiv and Shepulas Nefesh Elikis B'Nefesh Habahamis He B'Derech Yislapshus V'Yisaskos. So since on this level the Nefesh Elikis must engage with the Nefesh Habahamis and must speak the language of the Nefesh Habahamis, and it must relate to the Nefesh Habahamis, and that's Yislapshus V'Yisaskos. It must be occupied with the Nefesh Habahamis, understand where the Nefesh Habahamis is at, and engage with it on that level in order to elevate it and refine it. The Nefesh Habahamis, because the Nefesh Habahamis by default, it comprehends the good that is present, or at least one can experience from physical things. And the Nefesh Elikis so the Nefesh Elikis then engages with it to educate it and refine it and elevate it, and to explain to it that you can find better good, more everlasting good, and more meaningful good in godliness. And by this, and by doing this patiently and over time, it convinces the Nefesh Habahamis to come along and to see the good in Elikus and to want it. So here, this is real war, because of the neshama needing to engage fully with the nefesh habahamis. However, the level of chaya, which doesn't engage with the nefesh habahamis in the same way, since the effect that this level of chaya has on the nefesh habahamis is not in the same way as the nefesh ruach neshama. Then on this level, one experiences the full intensity of the love to godliness that the neshama has, and in the presence of that mispatlam b'meila ritzenis to nefesh habahamis, that the ritzenis of the nefesh habahamis cannot make themselves heard in the presence of this intense love to Hashem that the nefesh elikis articulates and makes felt. So ein ze inyan shel milchama. So this is not war in the same way that the nefesh, on the level of the nefesh ruach neshama, one engages in a battle with the nefesh habahamis, because here one doesn't lower themselves to speak to the nefesh habahamis in a way and in using ideas and concepts and language that the nefesh habahamis can relate to. Here, one simply turns on the nefesh elikis in its full intensity, or in that ratzon shalamayla mitam vadas, and in the presence of that, the nefesh habahamis is overwhelmed. So therefore, generally speaking, so in a relative sense, this is menucha relative to the mulchama that one has on the level of the nefesh ruach neshama. Ella, the only thing is shemenucha zuhi, that this menucha, this restful state, hiloi menucha be'etzem, it's not menucha be'etzem, like we said, that had to be achieved in order for the actual building of the Beis HaMikdash. That Shlomo was a menucha be'etzem. This is not menucha be'etzem, because it's simply the overwhelming of the nefesh habahamis. It's not that there's no room for the nefesh habahamis to be a nefesh habahamis, because like we said, on this level, klipa does have a counterpart to kedusha, and so therefore is loy menucha be'etzem. So it's not that be'etzem there is no counterpart, there's no adversary, but it's v'rak mitzad tag beides haratz and the nefesh elikis. It's only that the nefesh elikis overwhelms the nefesh habahamis. So this then would be the equivalent bedugmas hamenucha de David la'achri shavai eniachlei mikalev of this, similar to the state that David was in after Hashem brought him to a state of menucha after he had vanquished his enemies. Shamanucha shalei hoysam mitzad zeh shenotzach kol ha'milchama, said that menucha is not menucha be'etzem, because David was a man of war. It's only that once he had completed and accomplished and vanquished all those that he faced in those mechamas, he achieved a state of menucha. So it's relative menucha, not menucha b'atzim. And that would be that state of chaya, which is menucha, but relative menucha, not menucha b'atzim. That's why the Mitzvah Rebbe can describe it both ways. That initially describes it as a state of menucha, but later on he says that the real shalom is only yechida, not chaya, because chaya is not menucha b'atzim. It's only relative menucha. Who, however, the bit of the Ratzon of the Nefesh Habamis, where the Nefesh Habamis is no longer Nefesh Habamis, Al Yidei Gilui HaYechida, when a person reveals that level of his neshama, which is the Gilui HaYechida, the B'chol Moedecha, Hu Loish Al Yidei Gilui HaYechida, Nasa Bittul Oritzenis. It's not that the Nefesh Habamis overwhelms the Nefesh Habamis by the intensity of its Ratzon, of its love to Hashem, but rather when one reaches this level, this state of the Yechida Shemitzad, the Yechida that on this level, Shein Keneg the Lumazah, which has no counterpart in Klippa. So here, Ein Mokim Melechatchila L'Ritzenis. Here there's no room at all. There's a complete and entire negation of any Ritzenis of the Nefesh HaBahamis, which is Bedugmas HaMenucha de Shleima. This then is similar to the Menucha that Shleima was, Shahaisa, which was loyal Yidei Nitzach, and not that he engaged in Muhammad, not that there was a possibility of Muhammad, and it's just that he prevailed. Ella, rather, his menucha was menucha be'atzem. That was the menucha of Shleima, and that is the level of the menucha of Yechida, which is similar to the menucha of Shleima, where there is no possibility of war, because here there's no counterpart and there's no room for the Nefesh HaBahamis at all. So that is where we will learn to till tonight, but I just want to dwell on one thing quickly for the few minutes that we have remaining. And Amir Shem next week, we look forward to seeing all of you virtually, God willing, for the conclusion of the Maamer. But just to share a quick thought as we go through these three classes in preparation of Yud Tes Kislev that we spoke last week about how in the world and in the thinking and the thought of Chassidus, anticipation and preparation is itself a state. It's not only a means to an end, but it is an end in and of itself. Like we say that Hechsher mitzvah is greater than a mitzvah, that as one prepares themselves, that itself is a state in getting to where we need to go. So what is it that we're anticipating? We're anticipating Yud Tes Kislev, which is the greatest of days. As explained in numerous places and in numerous ways, it is the most important of days, the Rosh Hashana of Chassidus, and it's a Moed Tmidi, etc., etc. But just to share a specific and a quick thought as to the importance of the day of Yud Tes Kislev, and also Tes and Yud Kislev is all part of the same Geula, and actually is a step further in that which began on Yud Tes Kislev. It's as follows. We know that it says that what the Baal Shem Tov began, the Alter Rebbe continued, and like the Friedrich Rebbe says that he Teiras HaBaal Shem Tov, that the Chassidus Chabad isn't its own take on things. Rather, this is what the Baal Shem Tov was teaching. This is the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. But the Baal Shem Tov told the world, and Pirush Baal Shem Tov, he articulated and shared and taught what can be, the possibilities. And the Alter Rebbe was the one who taught how it can be achieved. So his Torah, what the Alter Rebbe taught, is the Torah of Baal Shem Tov. And we know the Baal Shem Tov, and by extension, the Alter Rebbe, like we said, which is the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, the how whatever the Baal Shem Tov taught can be achieved, the Baal Shem Tov transformed the world. And specifically, like Chassidus brings down numerous times on the Yud Tes Kislev Maamerim, that the Baal Shem Tov in his teachings sets Hashem free, sets the Jewish people free and actually sets the world free, which is not hyperbole. It's a Maamer Chazal that Hashem says, Kilu padani li ulevanai mibeina umas, that Hashem and the Jewish people find themselves in exile, and by doing certain things and by the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, one redeems the Jewish people. And in redeeming the Jewish people, we redeem Hashem. Like the Mashiach himself says, that he, when the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov will spread forth, that is when Mashiach will come. And so therefore these teachings set Hashem free and the Jewish people free. And like the Rebbe explains in a Sikha on a Pasuk, Vayashav Hayam Lifneis Beker Le'Sanoi Litnoi, that when the world fulfills its purpose and behaves in a manner that is in accordance with Hashem's intent for the world, so then the world is Vayashav Le'Sanoi, that the world is strengthened and the world is in a healthy place. And really, it's the Baal Shem Tov and Chassidus, and all the more so in Chassidus Chabad, where the ideas were articulated, which allows the person to engage the world in a way that the world itself fulfills its purpose and is a participant in fulfilling the kavanah of making a dira b'tachtonim. And we touched on it last week when we spoke about the Chamoirei of Avraham, but very quickly we know that the Baal Shem Tov's movement has simcha as part of the very DNA of the Chassidic movement. Simcha is integral to Chassidus. And we know that this prominence and this importance that is given to the simcha is not just a tactical calculation. That because a person has the milchama that we've been discussing, and because in having a milchama one must be energized, so therefore one must be besimcha, because if you're not besimcha, then even if you're stronger than your adversary, but if they're energized and you're not, then you won't prevail. So therefore, you make a calculated consideration that you have to be besimcha, which is all true. But the simcha of Chassidus runs a lot deeper. And very briefly, part of the reason, or maybe the entire reason, why Simcha was so central to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov is because for two reasons. One is that the Baal Shem Tov's teaching, the Pirush Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov revealed and taught that Hashem is present everywhere, in everything. In every aspect of creation, Hashem is continuously present, and it's only His presence that enables that being to exist. So Hashem is present fully in every aspect of creation, and Hashem is present in every event of history. That's Hashgacha Pratis. That whatever happens is Hashem is present, paying attention to detail. He delegates to nobody. Hashem is the one who is dictating every detail that happens. So Hashem is present within everything, and within every occurrence, Hashem is present. So when one realizes that they're in the presence of Hashem at all times, there's strength and joy and happiness being in the presence of Hashem. That is one of the reasons why the simcha is a natural byproduct and central to the teachings of Chassidus. And the other reason is, there's a saying that there's no simcha ka'ataras hasfekis. There's no simcha like resolving long-standing doubts. And really, there's been a long-standing existential doubt for all of history, which was, how do you reconcile the battle between the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Habamis? How do you resolve it? Now, there were tzaddikim throughout, there were great and holy people throughout, but to put into words how you resolve it in a way that both incorporates the Nefesh Habamis and doesn't seek to break the Nefesh Habamis, which is the way of Musar, doesn't seek to have the person lift themselves up and remove themselves from the state of milchama and go off to another place where things are great and profound and holy, but leaving their nefesh habahamis behind, which is the way of chakira, but rather a way that takes the person as far or even further than the way of chakira. But at the end of the day comes back around and involves the nefesh habahamis, like the famous teaching of the Baal Shem Tov on Kisira Chamer Seinacha. So this revolutionizes how we reconcile this battle between the nefesh elokis and nefesh habahamis. And now we have hataras hasfekis, and that brings tremendous relief, tremendous simcha and joy to the Jewish person. And all this, which the Baal Shem Tov taught can be done, the Alter Rebbe taught how it can be achieved. And this is the revolution, and this is what we anticipate and prepare ourselves for as we prepare for Yud Tes Kislev. We look forward to seeing you next week. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a great week. Good night.
Mach lichtig und warm rum sich. Hey, lichtig und warm hey. Der Rebbe ist der Vayach mach lichtig. Vayach lichtig und warm. Hey, lichtig und warm hey. Lichtig und warm hey. Mach lichtig und warm rum sich. Hey, lichtig und warm hey. Der Rebbe ist der Vayach mach lichtig. Vayach Maamer